This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the T. Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
And it is Joe Martek, and we are the team with two of the original three members here, which is Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, and Joe Martek, financial advisor. And Greg, he showed up last week.
He did. He showed up.
He's never showed up 2 weeks in a row in his whole life.
He's busy.
It'd be a miracle. But we do have an itinerary. No, excuse me. We do have an attorney here anyway, taking his spot. We have our special guest member, retired prosecuting attorney from Wisconsin, Alan Love. If we were doing Christian radio, I'd call him our messy Jew because that's not the proper title. He's what's called a messianic Jew, but I like messy better because messianic means he just converted to Christianity some years ago, right?
2009.
There you go.
Well, what we used to say, it's a completed.
Completed, yeah.
Right,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. That's
You're
pretty
correct,
good, too.
Dan.
340-1590, 340.
What's completed?
Who's completed? Hey, you look completed, but no, that's mean when you're laying prone in a box. Excuse me, forget that part.
Well, you know, it's always better to be seen than viewed, Joseph.
Seen and viewed.
I've had bosses request that, but
yeah, well, hey, I would imagine Carol on a few occasions might have requested it because. 340-1590.
after the triple indemnity.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? 340. Don't have a two-story house when you have triple indemnity. I'm telling you what. 340-1590. 340-1590. We started doing these shows back in 2004, and it was Dan and Greg Fasula, attorney, and myself, and then we added Ms. Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, hardest working realtor known to man, maybe the hardest working person. And then Mike Paulus, mortgage broker, and we work hand in glove. And Mike has taught us more about mortgages. I used to own a mortgage company. Of course, back when I did, they didn't have all.
Anybody could own them.
Anybody could own them. Thank you, Dave. Anyway, you see, Greg, you're not the only one that picks on me. So.
Hey, we all take turns getting picked on.
Know, Alan even saves up a couple every once in a while.
Yes, the bank is getting replenished today, though.
Very good.
You're safe today, Joe.
Hey,
we wouldn't pick on you if we didn't care for you. And you know what? I think that's a male trait. If I don't like you, I don't give you a hard time.
Well, you know what?
We should have a Joe ex-wife day.
That would be interesting.
And have all the exes in here.
That'd be interesting. But
isn't there like a terror movie like that?
Lucky a couple of them have died, so that helps.
All the exes in Texas.
The ashes on the table, right?
Oh.
I can't tell that story, I guess. So much for that.
No, don't tell that story.
So I got a new subject.
But I can tell my ashes story.
Which one?
All right. So you know that my dad and my grandmother wanted to go back to Russia if we ever got our property back. Well, I've been toting their ashes around for decades. And I finally decided, you know what? We're never getting that back. We're going to go there, and I'm going to smuggle some ashes into Russia and have my little service right there on the old property. Now, you can't. It's so hard to do anything in Russia. So we put their ashes in one of those ladies' facial scrub boxes because the bone and the ash is kind of gritty like that scrub, just in case they look. And so we smuggle it in, and we go over there and have our little service while my wife is talking to the old lady who lives there on the property now. Oh yeah, it's amazing what you can do if you have the will, So I've told Nancy, I go, not that I'm being serious, but I said, hey, when I die, just take my ashes and have them made into fishing lures, and my friends can take me fishing. That's the same response I got from her.
You know, I like the last part of that story better than the first part because that actually makes some sense.
That's right.
I have
Smuggling ashes. That sounds like a possible movie. Plot.
You know what gets me is, now forgive me, it's certain cultures you have to have a big funeral, otherwise your families, your friends are never going to talk to you again. It's just the way life is.
The biggest funeral that I've ever attended was the funeral of a good dear friend of mine who was a very successful black gentleman.
There you go.
It was
Was he Jamaican?
No, he
Okay.
was an American.
Okay, but
And I'm going to tell you what, he had done so much for the community during his life. It was a spectacular funeral.
Well, you go to New Orleans, you know. I mean,
they have a send-off.
They know how to have a funeral.
Yes,
I
they
mean,
do.
That's it. But you know, that's not just the cheapest way to go.
Well, you know, things are deteriorating in society. When I joined the show about 5 years ago, you'd talk about business, you'd talk about real estate, you'd talk about insurance.
How about politics?
Now we talk about death.
but you know, it was lively. It was to help people with their lives, and now we've deteriorated down into the
think
6 feet under realm. And
Think about this logic.
What's wrong with that?
The
We're all
ashes
getting
smuggling.
close.
If we-
Well, it was a
if-
great comedy series on HBO. I'll give you that.
If we add up this room with 5 men in it, there's about 300 years of combined experience.
That's true.
Of what?
Of what?
Yeah, of what?
Yes, that's what I was.
I didn't necessarily good experience, just total. Hey, I've got a new subject though. Speaking of business,
Yes.
Let me get into this, and then we'll talk about politics in a few minutes.
That sounds like a winner.
Have you I got to do the politics thing. The boat parades. Have you watched how many boat parades are going on?
It's amazing.
You know, all over the country, and I mean not just Florida. They said the biggest one ever was in Fort Myers. The one that happened over the weekend down in Jupiter with Donald Jr., they said over 1,000 boats. The one in Fort Myers was like 2,000 boats. The one in Texas was a couple thousand boats. Now, the only thing that I love about the media, they didn't talk much about anything to do with the parade except in Texas, 5 boats sunk. There must have been 100 articles on the 5 boats that sunk. I guess they said it was all Trump's fault, right?
Naturally.
That's what I figured. But they didn't tell you about all the rest of these.
Well, you have to be careful, Joe. You and I both know as boaters that when you have that many boats, you have that much swirl
Oh, yeah.
and that much turbulence going on. If you're not paying attention, you could take water over the bow real easy.
Well, the other side of the coin is we all know this. Boaters, like Victoria was here, she'd say, well, not all realtors are created equal. There's a lot of crazy boaters out there that you don't have to get a license to operate $1 million boat.
No.
You know, I mean, it's just a scary thing.
The guy that scares you, Joe, is the guy in the big boat with the fenders flapping in the breeze on each side with a big weight kicking up behind his boat, who's oblivious to everything else.
And a gigantic can of beer in his hand.
And he thinks his boat has brakes.
I will tell you, it's an interesting thing when you get a person on a boat that has never been on a boat before, and you're going, say, 10 miles an hour, and another boat's going 10 miles an hour coming at you, and they start to panic a half an hour in advance.
Yeah.
They're used to going 80 miles an hour. You know? So anyway, what happened is, not only here, they actually had boat parades over the weekend in Montana. They had them in Georgia. They had them in Texas. Multiple places all over the country. There was numbers of boat parades, and then on top of that parade, they had the Blue Lives Matter parades also, where a bunch of people were waving flags and going on bridges and stuff. I will tell you, I had a buddy of mine. He swears it's going to be one of the biggest Trump landslides in history, and I'm starting to believe it.
Well, here's the thing, Joe. Those people who got in their boats, and you and I know as boaters, most of those people, to get to that location, they have to really want to go.
Yeah.
Some of them have to trailer their boats or move their boat to get to the starting point.
Absolutely.
So it's a major undertaking. We also know how expensive a boat is to operate.
Right.
And the excitement of all those people getting together, that's what gives me, just like what you said, I do have the impression that Trump definitely has momentum at this point in time.
Right.
I believe, and you can quote me on this up the road, I believe the race is Trump's to lose.
The key thing is, and I was listening to it on CNBC today, which is part of the NBC family, which means they're extremely a liberal media, and they were saying that the polls show Biden winning in all of them, but there's a margin of error, but said there is a factor that they're not putting into this, and that is the Trump people quiet factor. Meaning, like last time when he won, he lost in every poll. Well, Trump supporters are not jumping up and down and screaming like like a lot of the liberals are. You know, there's not the AOCs. We don't have the.
Have you been polled?
No, never.
Has anybody in this room been polled?
You ever been polled, Greg?
No, for this. So who are all these people they're polling? If they're just polling the people who perhaps lean that direction, well, you're going to have
We
this
actually
problem.
got a call here.
From
Republican pollster.
from what?
A Republican
Now, how-
pollster.
did they identify themselves as a
No.
Republican?
No.
How do you know they were a Republican
Republican National Committee.
pollster? Okay.
RNC. They called you.
They identified themselves as RNC.
Now, whether it's true or not, now I did respond to Trump, and so you, Dan, and I get probably 5 or 10 hits a day from Trump or Trump supporters or the RNC on my email. At least 5 a day, maybe more. But that's okay. I had to do it. By the way, when you went out to the sandbar last weekend, there was at least 25 boats with Trump flags. None with Biden flag. Well, I finally broke down and bought 2 flags that I've got to put on the boat because my friends are saying, Martek, what kind of communist are you? You don't have a Trump flag on your boat. Well, guess what?
You took care of that.
I took care of that. I ordered them.
So if you were to drive around town, you would think that Trump, based on the signage, Trump is 1, garage sale is 2, and Biden is 3.
Yeah. That's
I'm
true.
going Pelosi for president.
Well, you know what? How many flags have you seen with Pelosi on? But you have to go. Oh, I saw the cartoon.
Beauty parlors in San Francisco.
Another cartoon in the paper today with Pelosi without a mask, and I'm being set up.
Yeah.
You realize, and it's in the Constitution, that if
He's number 3.
the election is not decided by January 20th, Inauguration Day, Pelosi would become the acting president.
She be it.
Is that right?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You know what? I can.
That's why
see-
she's getting her hair done.
You think she'll wear a mask on inauguration on today?
She should wear a
I
mask
hope
every
she
day.
is
Should wear
nowhere
one
near
every day.
that position on January 20th.
That's all right. She can sit behind him and tear his speech.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
340-1590, 340-1590.
Back to business, Joseph.
Now, here's a brand new subject. We have never talked about this before. and
What, business?
Yeah, no, this is business,
A
but
type of
it's a new
business.
concept. We all know the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA.
Yes.
Okay. For those of you who are listening that may not be sure, a Roth IRA, you put money into it. You're allowed to put $6,000, $7,000 a year, depending on how old you are, and you pay tax on that money. And then every dime that all the growth is tax-free when you take it out. So let's say you put in $100,000 into that Roth, and 30 years later it's worth $300,000 or $400,000. You can cash the whole thing in at one time. There's not a dime of tax. So the concept of the Roth, a lot of people like it because if you're not in a bad tax bracket to start with, you can put money aside, and then down the road you think you're going to have all that tax-free money. A traditional reverse, you get a tax deduction today for whatever you put in, but when you take it out, every dime is subject to ordinary income tax.
So it's just the tax is just deferred to a later date.
It's just deferred.
Now I do have a question. If I have a Roth IRA and I have paid the tax prior to putting the money in,
Right.
so all the money technically is mine.
Right.
Do I have a minimum distribution schedule based on my age,
No.
or only on traditional?
Only on traditional.
Okay.
So, but the rules are the same. You can't take the money out till 59 and a half, or otherwise you have a penalty, and the program is supposed to be at least 5 years old. In other words, you can't just start it today and take the money out tomorrow.
On the Roth.
And you have to have earned income. I mean, you can't have passive income, which means interest from a bank or brokerage account, dividends, whatever. Now, here comes a new wrinkle. there is a movement out that is scared to death that Biden is going to win, and if Biden wins and he takes the House and the Senate, it's almost a given, in fact it is a given, that taxes will go up. And taxes may go up considerably, according to the extreme liberal part.
Like
okay.
$3 trillion considerably.
Little minor thing. So now, a lot of people are saying, what if I take my traditional, and I cash it in, and I roll it into my Roth? I have to pay the tax to do the roll, but now I may have 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 sitting in my Roth that maybe 10 years from today will be worth $1 million, tax-free.
Maybe.
Well, it's always going to be tax-free, the Roth.
And it's always maybe.
Maybe.
No, you'd have to, no. Never in the history of America has they gone backwards, retroactive, and changed tax law. I know, maybe. I know what you're saying. So I was talking to some people, and I said, this is a strategy, but you don't have to worry about it till the day after the election. Then you have November, December to transfer any portion this year, and then in January, transfer another portion over 2 tax years, because even if the Democrats get in, they can't do anything till after Inauguration Day.
Well, they have to actually meet and get it passed.
Yeah, so it wouldn't happen probably for the first year, probably, but the bottom line is you'd have 2 tax years that you could make this transition, and if you think the tax code might go up to 50 or 60%, which is entirely possible because it's been as high as 90% years ago.
But it was 90% only on the upper portion of your dollars. On the small part, when you first go in where you had to pay taxes, the tax rate was low.
Well, today it's extremely low. There's none on the first X, and then it's 10%.
Right, and it climbs up.
It climbs, yeah. So it goes up to 36. So the bottom line is, if it went up to 50 or 60, but if the break was at 100 or 150, where it started to become dramatic, which it could.
Right.
So the whole thing is this: it's just another tax strategy that may or may not come to fruition. We sure hope not. Our group here, with the exception of Greg, all wants our guy Trump to get reelected. And I honestly believe that there's going to be a landslide, watching the support. And it isn't just in Martin County. St. Lucie County is a Democratic county, and there's tons of support in St. Lucie County.
Well, you know what? Here's what I tell a lot of my friends who don't particularly care for Donald Trump's mannerisms.
Well, nobody does.
Okay. And I tell them, look, I just can't see how an intelligent person like you would vote for Biden based on the things that we suspect, all the things he's told you he's going to do to you. He's not hiding and pretending. He's already told you.
Yeah.
This is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So if you can't vote for Trump and you shouldn't vote for Biden, then you can have a write-in candidate. Don't waste your vote. Go to the polls, vote for everybody else. That's all important. But just don't cast your vote there. That's just a foolish thing to do.
There's another thing that happens, and this is where our boy Trump, behind the scenes, we've all heard rumors, there's all been articles that have shown politicians are just as crass and crazy and say all kinds of stupid things, but they don't do it publicly. They don't get caught very often doing it, but it just seems...
Trump is not a polished politician.
There you go.
He has cut his teeth in New York development.
Yep.
Yeah, he's not a politician at all.
That should give you an indication of the way he's going to come across. Don't be offended by the things he says. I didn't hire him to be my spiritual guidance guy. I didn't hire him to give me to be my moral compass. I hired him to get American business back in good working order.
Well, the whole thing is, it was James Cargill. I love that name, Carville, but I like him Cargill better. That said, hey, way back, it's the economy, stupid. No matter what happens, the most important thing when it comes to an election is your personal life and your personal income, and then your family's life and their income. You want your people to all have a decent life and have jobs, et cetera, and job security.
Well, I mean, look at what had happened in the past. We allowed China to take tremendous amount of our factories and those good factory-paying jobs, and no longer does it say made in the USA on many of these products. It comes from China.
Right.
Now, I can tell you, I've had a lot of discussions with my friends who said, well, Dan, it's so much cheaper. It's cheaper to bring it over. Do you think people are willing to pay a little bit more to have made in the USA on the label? And I truly believe that most people are, if the product is good and the jobs are here. And here's what woke a lot of people up when we had this COVID, and we got word that certain medications may not get to us in a timely fashion, certain things may have shortages. We need to be self-sufficient on many of these things, and that means bringing those factories and those factory jobs back to America, where we can sort of stand alone, and then on things that are not that dependent upon our security and our health, we can get those from any place. But we should have enough made in-house that we can take care of our own.
Well, what are they going to call that new country out there in the West?
Well, California, you mean?
California, Oregon, and Washington seceding. Since we have 47, well, we can bring Puerto Rico, get back to 48.
We can pick up Guam.
They can,
yeah, we can pick up Guam.
They could have Guam and Puerto Rico.
We can
can't
pick
they?
up the Virgin Islands.
The key, hey, I will tell you, it's gonna be a bit interesting. Going to be a bit interesting. But you remember when Trump was all mad at Germany for saying, hey, they're bringing in their oil from Russia?
Right.
He said, how can you be so dumb to depend on a communist country, a dictatorship, for your supply when you can get it from a free country, which you're a free country? And look at America, for the first time in forever, is energy independent under this president. And it's never happened
If
before.
you're not old enough to remember the gas lines and the
boy.
embargoes,
Yeah.
you have no clue what we're really talking about.
Yeah, hey, no doubt about it. 340-1590, 340-1590. And we got a caller. Hey, Russ, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Yeah, you guys just blamed China for taking a job. Who's going to hold these CEOs accountable for sending our jobs to China? I started out in trade school, or in my second trade school, as a plastic injection mold maker. Well, had I stayed in that position, I'd have been out of a job, because there's not a piece of plastic manufactured in America. It hasn't for 20 years now.
But you know what happened,
So
Russ?
it's not China's fault they took a job. It's the CEOs for selling us out.
Well,
These
absolutely.
guys that are now making 500 times more
Russ,
than they were before this happened.
Russ, you take all these companies that you're just throwing under the bus now, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but if you're a public company, you're owned by your stockholders. Now, all those same stockholders are going into Walmart buying all these products from China, too. So the whole concept was free enterprise, which is what America has been based on, and these companies are saying, hey, we have to compete now. What happened is the biggest problem was it wasn't CEOs, it's government programs which made it attractive for companies to leave the country. What Trump is trying to do and has done is made it more attractive for them to stay and come back, and make it more difficult for them to leave the country and make these products.
Plus, it's the trade imbalance. If you are an American producer of, say, product X, and you want to export it to China, the tariff that they will place upon your product will make your product not competitive in the Chinese market.
Exactly.
But up until now, we have not done that with Chinese products.
Fair trade is the key, what this man is trying to do. Hey, we'll trade you no tariff across the board. Free enterprise, real legitimate free enterprise. And he managed to do quite a bit of it. Some big companies, Black & Decker, big ones, have brought back all their production into America. The key thing is this: you have to be able to compete. This is a free enterprise society. And hey, our boy is making it happen.
But you're right.
I'd agree with this, except for one thing. The CEOs and the upper management have all quintupled their incomes in the last 30 years. So
and you know
can't
what?
just say
You're
it's
absolutely
this and
right.
that.
The wage difference between, let's say, the frontline guy out there in the factory and the guy in the big office, the CEO at one time, was much closer together than it is today. And so I agree with that. We should hold, through our investment in companies, we should watch where we invest our money in stocks.
Here comes the thing that you got another problem with, Russ. Let's just take the Standard & Poor's 500. It's 500 of America's biggest companies. And tons of people invest in an index. They put their money in the index because it's averaged 10% a year for the last 90 years. So they say, hey, that's pretty good, and it's 500 of America's biggest companies. These are all publicly traded companies owned by shareholders, which is everybody in America. And they're paying these executives $1 and $2 and $3 and $5 million a year or more, as long as their companies are making money. And
as an investor, you should know what they're doing. It's just like if I am going to donate to a charity, before I cut out my check, and I cut out lots of checks every year, I look and see how much money actually goes to fundraising, how much money goes to the CEO, and you'd be shocked by how much, or let me rephrase, how little money actually gets to the intended recipient on some of these huge charities we see all the time. So, you just have to look and see where your money is going. And I do believe that no CEO is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, no matter how much money he makes for his company.
However, you know what happens is, back again. It's like a sports person. People say, well, that guy's making $50 million and he's playing basketball. Well, I say, well, somebody's willing to buy the tickets and watch the TV.
That's right.
So, Russ, you and I don't agree on this, and that's a good thing. I think everybody in America gets paid exactly what they're worth, because if they get paid too much, they need to be replaced by somebody lower. And I have seen big companies. Big companies that were paying big money to one person, fire them and hire 3 people for less money than they were paying.
But don't you hate that golden parachute that comes along with that firing?
You get a $20 million bonus for getting fired, right?
Well, this is a problem with that, though. You've got those guys are the ones who are deciding who's getting paid. Me on the shop floor doesn't get to decide who my boss.
That's like Congress voting themselves a raise.
Same thing. Congress voting themselves a raise. Hey, Russ, I'll tell you, the inequities have been there forever. However, there's always been the argument between labor and management that labor's doing all the work and management's getting all the credit. Well, guess what? If a person is not happy doing labor and they want to get into management, if they have to go to school, they have to do something, you can make the move. People do it all the time. It's not necessarily easy, but people that are not happy with what they're doing, do something about it.
Well, here's the problem with that concept. Now we've got no millennials got any trade school experience. There's nobody working in the factory. We've got 1,400 managers applying for this manager job.
Right.
Who the heck? You can't have that many managers. They flat out can't
Greg,
work.
didn't you say
you're
that
on the money, brother?
Indian River State College has now got some trade school programs out there now?
Oh yeah,
you
bet.
Big time.
Oh yeah,
plumbing, electrical, etc.
Yeah,
they're trying to bring tradesmen in and getting them. Used to be the day you were an apprentice.
Well, if you're going to try to encourage companies to come back to America to produce a product, you have to have a workforce for them.
Exactly.
And wait till you see the advanced manufacturing building on the IRSC campus.
Oh, yeah?
This new president is very interesting because he's not an educator. He is an innovator, and he is an entrepreneur. So he is really, as a CEO, come from the business world, and he's going to take Ed Massey's vision to the next level.
That's exciting to hear.
It is very exciting.
Well, you know, here what you're saying, Russ, is been true. I grew up in Detroit, and everybody worked in the factory. That's the way you did. My dad was a milkman, but either you were supplying the workers that were in the factory, or you were in the factory. So, and my uncle worked for Chrysler for 42 years. Ford and General Motors and Chrysler was the backbone of our family. But
and how long were they employed by Ford and Chrysler? Most of their life.
My uncle, 42 years.
There you go.
Yeah.
But see, that doesn't happen anymore.
No.
10 years is a long career.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Russ.
Call us again, brother.
Yep.
Call him, my man. Yell at me. 340.
Yeah, I had to keep you. You elitist guys honest.
You got to
That's
keep
all
us
good.
honest, Russ. We need that. Thanks. 340-1590, 340-1590. And we got our producer who's falling asleep on us over here thinks we may have another call, but he's got to find the right button to push. He's not really good at pushing buttons. I think did we lose him or no?
I'm not sure.
He's not sure.
Yeah, it says 1, but there's no 1.
There's no one.
No.
Try 2.
Try 2. Do we have a caller or no?
Pat from Jensen Beach.
Hey,
on 2.
Pat. It's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Yeah, great. This is Mr. Orwellian. How you enjoying the Orwellian world that we're living in?
1984.
Here we go. Here we go.
This is the way our government was designed. It was a self-government. We obviously have to have police, firemen, jails, and governors.
Right.
So that's all. That's an indication. We shouldn't even be talking politics with each other. This is, what I say to people now is this. I've been saying this a while. For whatever reason, for whatever indication, the results are this. So they can make up their own mind. I'm not here to persuade anybody. You make up your own mind. I'm just telling you the reality is we're supposed to be a zero-based, prioritized budget.
So much for that.
Limits. And that's the government can't grow before the economy grows.
The state level
We
has
borrow
to be
what
balanced.
we need, Pat. We borrow the excess.
I'm telling you, yeah.
If we did that, we'd never ever have any of these issues.
Well, Pat, many of our states.
And we're talking about all sorts of, people's personal thing and this. That's not has nothing to do with the government. The government has to do with the roads and protecting the country. Period.
Well, what's
So
happening?
Why
Isn't
the economy grows? As the economy grows, the economy will grow before the government instead of the government growing and then the economy growing. Because
how
if we get through this, it's still going to be a disaster.
So how do you justify all this criminal activity out west, in Oregon and California and Washington State and Minnesota? They're burning and looting and rioting, but we're supposed to have police that are going to protect our people, but they're not allowed to protect them.
That's what I'm telling you. That's up to the mayor, the governor, and if they're not allowed the fire department to do their job, or they're not going to allow the police to do their job.
Then you need to move. If you can't live with that, you need to move out of that town.
Move out of those towns.
And they are leaving those towns
Like
by
crazy.
leaps and bounds. And here's what I
know,
think.
but they're just going to bring the same problem here. They're just
Yeah, but
not
we're
getting
we're a
what
ki-
our
we're a
country
concealed
is.
weapons carry state. That won't fly here, brother. Let me tell you,
I'm going to
Pat.
tell you right now, it's not going to happen in Florida. It's not going to happen in Florida. The key thing that happened.
I'm glad to hear you say that, but I really think that it's eventually it's like a guillotine. Once people start getting thirsty, and you see the way they're talking, they are thirsty. They're saying the most outrageous things. I've never heard politicians that used to. They'd have, they've all been a little Machiavellian, but they wouldn't show it. I mean, for God's sake, they show it. I mean,
Well, it might be just a sign of the times and a sign of the fact we have all of this technology and you can't hide anything. And
Well, here's a great indicator. Many of the people who live south of here, Pat, in Dade and Broward County, there's a huge population there of people who left Venezuela and who left Cuba because of communist-run governments.
Right.
The amount of support that President Trump now has within that community is now way greater than it's ever been for the Democratic Party. That's an indication that people who actually know how terrible those things are standing up and saying, not on my watch.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you, Pat, not on my watch.
Not
I
on
can't
mine.
say what's going to happen in 50 years. I can only control what's happening now.
Well, and Pat, I tell you, I've got clients all over the country, and I talk to people literally from Montana to Alabama to here to New York to Jersey. Good people, solid people. They're going to leave these areas and they're going to go to areas that are safer, that people believe in police protection, that believe in fire protection, they believe in protecting their things. They're not going to live where they're at fear. I was saying to my girlfriend, I said, I haven't owned a gun for years, but I'm starting to get scared that I might want to buy a shotgun because who knows what's going to walk down the street anymore that the police aren't
I
going to
have
pay
several.
attention.
I'll be happy to loan you one.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, good. I don't have to buy one now.
I got an old rusty. I got an old rusty one. I'll give you.
Yeah.
You want to protect your country. Somebody, when you're sitting in a restaurant, somebody comes stand up and do Zeke Isle. No, I'm not standing up. I'm not doing Zeke Isle. I'm not doing any of that. So the only way you're going to get around that is, and the problem is here, this is exactly what happened in Germany. You had the punks spitting in everybody's face, the radical crap, just like you got now, 100 years later, 90 years later. And what happened was you got a pushback from the other side like you wouldn't believe. And
Well,
that's
your
what
local
the
police
danger
and
is.
sheriff
That's
have
what
a.
the danger is here.
The local sheriff and the police, in my opinion, they have an unwritten contract with you and me.
Yeah, yeah.
We pay them through our tax dollars
To protect us.
to protect us
Yeah.
and protect our property, and that's what we expect to do. Because, and the truth is this: the police are here to protect the rioters from people like me.
Protect and defend. I mean, let's face it.
I'm not going to tolerate
No.
that. So what the police need to do is get that under control.
Yeah.
You're allowed, and I encourage you to have peaceful protests. If you don't like the way the laws are, follow politics, get people elected, get laws changed, but don't try to change the law
Yeah.
by beating me
You're
up.
talking logic, though. You're talking logic to people who have no reason.
Well,
I hope
but
that
here
the
comes
pendulum
voting.
has swung so
But you know what?
that
You know
it'll
what?
swing back.
If those people all the crazies want to live in the same neighborhood, but guess what? When they run out of money and the federal government doesn't support them, you're going to have 100,000 people on the street in L.A. rather than 60,000.
Hey, I just saw an article. There was 2 young ladies who harassed a young boy and stole his MAGA hat in Delaware. They've now been prosecuted on 4 felony charges, and they're looking at 15 years.
Guess what? When you steal,
How do you get 4 felonies in one hat?
Well,
They-
because
they
of all
took-
the
they-
different things they did.
they took it
between
away from 'em 4 times.
Child endangerment, stealing, it's all kinds. In other words, a good prosecuting attorney, as Alan can tell you, can give you a large litany of things you did wrong, all at the same crime.
we may sue them on 10 counts and only settle on 4 to throw them in jail.
You can have a number of counts on one crime.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Hey, listen, Pat, thanks for calling in. I got another caller here that's been holding on. Call me back next week and pick on me, will you?
Thanks.
Bye. 340-1590. Hey, Tom, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio. Tom, are you there?
I am.
Good man. You're on the radio. Thanks for calling.
Here's my question. My question is, it's somewhat hypothetical. It's a tax question. I'm 70 years old. I've been retired for about 4 years. I have about, and I guess I can throw this number out there. It's not a security risk. About 130,000 in index funds through the PNC finance markets.
Whatever.
My concern is, if Biden does get elected, my concern is that the market may take a dump.
Absolutely.
And my concern with that is, what can I do with that money? Can I draw that money out and put it into an IRA or something more secure than the market's going to be?
Well, let's just talk about that quickly. You're invested right now in an index fund, probably the Standard & Poor's 500. Am I right?
Yes.
And you're invested with PNC Securities or somebody like that. I don't care who it is. You can call them up on the phone right now, and you can say, I want 100% of that money taken out of the S&P 500 and put into a money market account. It won't cost you a penny to do that. They will do that for you at 4 o'clock today. And then 4 o'clock today, you're now in a money market account. Then guess what happens? 2 days later, you can call them back and say, hey, I want to put it back into the S&P 500, and you can do that over the phone with any stock brokerage firm.
But when you take it out, that should lock it in and reduce most of the volatility of the market.
Well, the money market's not going to go up or down. It's not going to pay anything.
No, I'm more concerned about hanging on with both hands than I am in growth at that point.
I have a lot of people, Tom, wearing your hat that are saying right now, Joe, what do I do? And I said, well, October, that's around the corner. That's decision time. if you really think that he's not going to get elected, just go into the money market account. Just put your money in a money market. I've got people literally right now opening accounts with me that we're not investing in anything. We're just sitting in cash, waiting.
You're parking it.
We're parking the money.
I didn't know if I would be penalized.
Nope.
And again, like I said, would it not be taxed if I pulled it out?
Number one, there is no. If it's in an IRA today, is your money invested in a retirement account?
No, it's in. I have some money in.
Okay, well, let's say you got $100,000 sitting in your brokerage account in an index fund. You don't you just put it to a money market account. That's a lateral move. You took $100,000 from the stock market and you put $100,000 into the money market. There is no tax.
Okay.
There's no tax.
Okay.
If it's an IRA and you take it out and put it in your pocket, then it's subject to tax.
If it's
Oh,
not
all
a
right.
Roth.
Well, that's not my intention.
Yeah.
My intention is to just, like I said, to hang on with both hands to what I have.
Just park
in
it.
case
Hey,
of-
you
in
call
case
them up.
of,
You call them up right now and just say, hey, can I do this, and what's it going to cost me? And it might cost you $75 or something, but it shouldn't cost you next to nothing to have them move the money from the index fund into a money market account, and it will. And if it's in a mutual fund, which I bet you it is, the 4 o'clock rule comes in. They can only do the trade at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
It's just an in-house from one pocket to the next.
It's it. You're changing pockets.
Well, and I didn't want to necessarily, and I understand what you're saying. I didn't necessarily wanted to do it today. I like to play with the market a little bit here, and it's been favorable to us.
Of course.
So I mean, I'd like to prolong it a little bit further. Last 3 days of kind of taking a dump.
Sure.
But today there's just September's that way. I mean, there's profit takers, and now it's a rebound again. It fluctuates from time to time. I'm not in a panic situation.
No.
My concern is more of the election.
My thing is this. Remember what I just said. Anybody that's listening, if you have a brokerage account, if you have an IRA, if you have a 401k, any kind of money that is your money, I don't care who's holding it, with a phone call, almost all of them, in fact, it should be all of them, have the ability to move that money out of the market into a fixed account or a money market account. I've never seen anybody that did not have, even a 401k or 403b, that did not have a fixed or money market account. Some won't allow you to do it every day. Some say 12 times a year, 25 times a year. But the bottom line is, if you're not doing it every day, anytime you want to do it, whether it's this week, next week, or the week after, it's a phone call.
So we would encourage you to call your broker and confirm everything we said, because I believe Joe's right on the money. But do that.
I don't doubt that.
And then have an exit strategy plan for yourself.
Yeah.
So you say, on this day, unless the market just lost half of its equity, I'm getting out. So know when you're going to go.
All you got to do, and there's another thing you can do. This is another strategy. It's called a stop. The stop says if it hits a certain price, you sell it automatically. You don't even have to be asleep or awake. I mean, you need to talk to whoever you've got holding that money and just say, hey, here's my thing. I talked to Joe on the radio. Can I do this? And they'll probably say sure.
But Joe, don't forget what you told him was, if that stock hit that number at noon,
right,
you're not getting out till 4 o'clock, brother.
No matter what.
No matter what. So it could go down even further.
So the other side of it, here's another.
I mean, that's just the market.
Well,
right. And I was in managed funds with them, and I was paying 1.5% annually,
right,
which can be substantial on $100,000 or $130,000.
Of course.
Yeah, percentage-wise.
But I think all my gains were market-driven. So I elected to get out of managed funds and just go with the index fund.
Let me do one more thing while you're on the index fund. When you talk to your broker, you know the difference between an exchange-traded fund and a mutual fund?
I do not.
Okay, let's do a real quick lesson, real quick. A mutual fund only trades at 4 o'clock. An exchange-traded fund can be the exact same fund, the S&P 500. It buys and sells just like a share of stock. You can buy it at 9:30. You can sell it at 9:35. You can buy it again at 10 or 10:30 and sell it again at 10:35. You don't have to wait till 4 o'clock. So I am 1,000% believer in exchange-traded funds as opposed to a mutual fund. So when you talk to your broker again, just say, am I in an exchange-traded fund or am I in a mutual fund? If you are in an exchange-traded fund, there are other benefits, which I can go into, which we've gone into on the radio. And once I get you off this thing, I might want to talk a little bit more about that. So listen to me. Listen to me on the radio, because the exchange trade.
I will, and I enjoy your input.
So Joe,
and I appreciate it.
If he was in a regular mutual fund now,
right,
and he goes ahead with his strategy, which is, hey, I'm going to check into this and I'm going to park this money. What I would then recommend is to talk to the broker or to talk to you. And when you go back into the market, go into a different type of fund.
Go into the exchange
traded fund.
So, Tom, let me talk. I'm going to talk on off. You hang up, and I'm going to talk about the difference between an exchange traded fund, and this is important stuff. So even if you're in a mutual fund today, you might want to just transfer it and find out what it cost to move from your left pocket to your right pocket from a mutual fund to an exchange traded fund, and I'm going to tell you why as soon as you hang up. All right.
The guy at PNC wasn't real happy when I decided to go from managed funds to index funds, because he obviously was losing that commission.
You might want to talk to Joe Martek off the radio, and
I believe so. I'm going to hang up, but thank you so much. It's been very insightful, and I listen every chance I can get.
Thanks, appreciate it. 340-1590.
See, my idea of a stop is send this guy to Home Depot, get a saw, cut into your mattress and throw the money in there and wait.
You see that commercial? If your idea of a bear market,
it
shows all these bears roaming around.
Did I ever tell you the story about my brother-in-law Horace? Now, my brother-in-law Horace, he had a big pig parlor.
You did
farm.
tell what?
All right, and so Horace was saving up his cash, and he figured the safest place was to bury it in the middle of the pig pen. And then one day he decided he was going to buy a house, and he brought all his cash into the bank, and it smelled like a horse fertilizer in there. And the banker, he's a buddy of the family, he goes, please never bring money like that into our bank again.
Hey, let's take one more call, and then I want to talk about exchange traded funds. We've only got like 5 minutes left, right? Hey, Carl, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Hey, good day, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
This got an interesting little story. My wife.
I'm losing you.
Speak up, Carl. You are fading away.
Are you here? You got me now?
Wow.
We got a real bad connection.
Whoop. He's gone.
We just lost you.
Yeah.
Okay, you might have been on a cell phone or something.
He may have been out on the island. Yeah.
Joe, quickly, before you talk about exchange-traded funds, I have an IRA question.
Okay.
And I would like from you an intelligent, relevant answer to my question.
Ask it.
Don't ask him.
If you have an IRA,
You're asking the wrong guy.
If you have an IRA, but you do not have a Roth, do you have to, can you just basically fill out an account form to transfer to a Roth?
Yes.
So you can take advantage of the taxes?
Yes. However, you now have to pay all the taxes.
Right. Yeah. But all it is opening a new account.
All
then,
it is
right?
transferring one to the other.
Okay.
Okay, that's simple. Got it. So let's talk about the difference. I got 4 minutes left to talk about exchange-traded funds. So here we go with the mutual fund. Mutual, think about this. You ever hear that word mutual? Mutual means a whole bunch of us together in like a partnership. So what a mutual fund company does, it goes out and buys stock in 100 companies and says, okay, fine, we're going to charge a fee, and you can come in and get a little slice of that pie. So we have $1 million in there, and you want $10,000 worth. We cut you a little piece. But you're a part of that whole mutual group. Here's one of the big problems with the mutual fund, except not including the fact that it only trades at 4 o'clock. Let's say you put that money in November, and you put $100,000 in, and you buy into that mutual fund, and then January comes along and it's down to $90,000, and you get a tax form that says you owe money because you made money, and you say, wait a minute, I did not make any money, period. Wait a minute. The mutual fund company that owns all of these stocks may have sold some of those stocks after you bought them, and they may have bought those same stocks 10 and 20 years ago, so they made a profit. You, as part of that mutual group, owe taxes
On the profit.
on the profit, even though your personal account didn't make it. Okay? Now, exchange traded fund does not do that. It trades your individual account. I don't care if you've got 100 or 500 companies in there, whatever you've got, you stand on your own. You are not a part of anybody else's account. Not only can you buy and sell it just like a share of stock anytime you want, if the market's open, but your account, tax-wise, is only your account. So the two major things that make an exchange-traded fund superior to a mutual fund, in my opinion, are those. Last but not least, it's not always this way, but exchange-traded funds seem to be less cost than most mutual funds.
You mean the cost to purchase them?
Nope, the cost to hold them. In other words, if the company that's doing the exchange-traded fund and a mutual fund charges a fee every year, you don't ever see it, but they call it a net asset value very often. It shows you what it's worth today. Well, they have subtracted 1/365th of whatever the fee is that day from your account. Well, say the fee's 5%. Well, divide 5% by 365 days. That little piece is taken out of your account every day.
That's your per diem.
That's your per diem deduction. Now, it also, some only charge 1/4 to 0.5%, especially in the index funds. Because the index, you don't have to be a genius to copy. So all you're doing is copying somebody else's work and buying these stocks, this index or this mutual fund. So when Pat was calling in about he has a, quote, index fund, the index funds are usually the least expensive managed funds.
Oh.
Okay. I just needed to get out that information.
We can talk about it again next
ETFs.
week.
Well, you know, it's a thing that we talk about it all the time.
It's going to be important as we get closer to the election,
Yep.
Joe.
And talking like we talked about rolling an IRA from a traditional to a Roth, you can do. You can move. I've never heard of anybody going the other direction because it makes no sense. But if you move a traditional to a Roth, now again, remember this: if you contribute to a Roth or a traditional, you have to be working. You have to have employment. But once you're retired and not, you may have 100 or 200 or pick a number, $1,000 sitting in that traditional account. You can roll that tax-free into, forget tax-free. You can roll it into that Roth account, but you'd have to pay the tax.
Bye,
Now,
folks.
I think we're supposed to leave. Does that sound right?
You're already gone.
I'm already gone.
And next week, more on Betsy Roth. Oh, sorry about that.
I'm glad you're not on the radio.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.